What's going on, everybody? Blade 55555 here, and today I'm going to update you guys on what I've been up to and why I haven't been uploading to YouTube or streaming very recently. And as you can see in the title, I'm also going to go over my opinion on Season 9, which is something I've never really done before. Usually I do a patch notes review and that's it, but that's not going to be the same. So, the first thing I kind of want to go over with is just tell you guys a short reason why I stopped playing and uploading to YouTube. For starters, I just want to note that I'm not looking for any pity or sympathy or whatever you want to state. If you've been watching my streams, which was probably back in January or December, and I'd say even going as far back as October of last year, before I stopped playing, you'll notice that I was getting angry at the game a lot. And to be honest, I never really realized it at the time, which I think is pretty common. Um, and it really took my dog dying to show me that, which is very weird to say, right? Like, it's like, whoa, what? But that's what happened. My dog died, and very unexpectedly, there was like no warning, just happened. It was literally a snap of my fingers. And after that happened, I tried to play Age of Empires 4, but every time I tried playing it, I just wasn't enjoying the game. I was having no fun. Didn't matter what I did, and eventually it got back to the point where I stopped playing. Now, for the update. I am now confident in saying that I am back to playing Age of Empires 4. I've been playing again for the past since Season 9 came out, and in short, I'm having a lot of fun. I'm enjoying the game again. And, that's kind of why I'm making this video. First, I just want that brief update on that, and then to kind of give you my thoughts on the patch. I'm going to give you a pros and cons, and then I also just want to state before I go into that, though, is, my opinion is going to be a little biased. But I'm going to also try to provide a non-biased opinions when it comes to the pros and cons as much as I can. Like I said, I haven't been enjoying AoE4 until this season where the Siege rework happened, which is the big part of Season 9. Before the Siege rework, I honestly thought I was never going to play Age of Empires 4 again. Every time I thought I wanted to play it, I would watch a stream, and I would see it get to Castle Age. And then the Springolds would come out, and the Mangonels. And then my desire to play Age of Empires 4 disappeared. And then obviously Season 9 came out. And honestly, if it wasn't for my new puppy, I would be playing a lot more Age of Empires 4 than I am now. I'm trying to do a minimum 3 days of streams a week, but I'm going to try to bump that up to 5. We'll see. The puppy's taking a lot of my time at the moment. And now to kind of get into why is Season 9 so enjoyable for me. If you are not aware or you haven't watched my patch notes video, the short version is that Season 9 reworked Siege. Springolds, for example, no longer counter Siege. They're an anti-melee infantry. They work kind of the same as Scorpions in Age of Empires 2. Culverins, which used to be the special, almost a better Springold because it could one-shot Springolds for the most part, are now just a special Bombard. Mangonels and Nest of Bees do less splash damage. And that's kind of just the short TLDR of the patch. There are a lot of other things that the patch did do. And that's the main focus of this video is the Siege rework. Most people I have talked to, and when I say most people, I'm talking about high-level players or pros, seem to be enjoying the patch a lot. There are some that don't enjoy it, which is fine. People have their opinions, and that's not the point of this video. I'm not trying to shame anyone who doesn't like this patch. If you don't like it, I can understand why, but I'm going to go into the pros and cons now into why I think this is, or at least for me, good. And again, I'm going to try to be as unbiased as possible, which, there's always going to be a little bit of bias. So pro number 1, it is now easier to end games in Castle Age compared to before. If you have a military advantage or there is a keep you want to destroy, you can now make trebuchets. Before, in the previous patch, you didn't see trebuchets very often. Now, you did see them sometimes, but the reason why you didn't see them very often is because of Springolds. Springolds plus keeps plus your own siege made it very hard to break. Since Springolds no longer counter siege, this makes it easier to destroy keeps. So if there's a keep in your face, instead of being like, well, I need to invest a ton of wood into trebuchets plus Springolds. Now, I can't remember the cost for a trebuchet, but it's like 350 or 400 wood or something, which is a lot because you needed Springolds to defend it. Otherwise, your opponent makes 2 Springolds, wipes out your trebuchet, and that's that. There were exceptions where you would see trebuchets before this patch, obviously, but for the most part, that was why you didn't do it. It was very wood intensive because you couldn't just make a trebuchet, you had to make springolds, which then hurts you from transitioning into farms. So normally when keeps came into play, it would stall the game out and players would kind of have to go Imperial. Now that's not the case every time, of course, but just given the general view. Now the second pro that I have for the game is games are no longer siege centric. Previously, if your opponent made a mangonel, you would have to pull back and get your own springolds. Unless they had 0 units, 0 way to protect their mangonel, then you could rush it, but that was, again, kind of rare. And then you would have to go into a springold war. If you lost the springold war, you were not pushing into that base anymore. You can't because your opponent has mangonels or nest of bees, and if they have springolds and you don't, there's no way for you to push into the base, again, unless you have just an insane advantage where it doesn't matter. But I'm talking in this case where you have a slight advantage or something like that. That's now gone from the game. If you have a significant military advantage and your opponent, let's say, doesn't have very many units, maybe they're being extra greedy, maybe you just killed their army, well, now you can put significant pressure, and a single mangonel or nest of bee will not stop you from pushing the base, because you can also kill a mangonel or nest of bee with ranged units. Obviously you have to have a decent chunk to kill them in a fast time because, but yeah, anyway. Number 3. Games are more action-packed in the Castle Age. This kind of piggybacks on the Springolds, but it is now much easier to be more active with your units. As I said in the first point, it's easier to take down keeps, and without having to invest into a lot of siege. In pre-patch you had to invest in siege. If you didn't invest in siege, you were going to be, and your opponent did, you were not going to be able to push very far. This allows your army to be more mobile because you're not waiting for your springolds to push or your mangonels and springolds to push before you can go in with your units. Now you can kind of go everywhere, and that is one of the reasons I'm having a lot more fun playing it, is because I've been playing a lot of games that way. And so just kind of give you guys I'm just seeing a lot more action in Castle Age in general, just from me playing and from watching. It's been a lot of fun to watch. I've seen a lot of really good games that I don't think would have been as fun to watch for me in the pre-patch. And to give you another kind of example of this, I played a game versus China where they got to Castle Age. If this was in the previous patch, I hated when China hit Castle Age. When I saw Castle Age, I groaned. I would think, oh my god, here we go, because China would make siege, nest of bees, which have always been better than mangonels, but also they have springolds, and their springolds always took an extra shot than every other civ in the game. So instead of 3 springolds to kill, it was 4, I think. I may be wrong on the numbers, but I know it was 1 extra. When it happened this patch, for the first time since playing Age of Empires 4, when China hit Castle Age, I didn't care. It didn't scare me. It didn't make me groan. It didn't make me dread how the game was going to play out, because I knew it wasn't going to go into a siege warfare game. And that's just an example I want to give because to me that's such a big difference in how I can enjoy the game than I couldn't before. There was a lot of civs like this that I felt this way. And again, for some players this is going to be a negative. I'm listing it as a positive for obvious reasons. And then for kind of the fourth thing, this can be a negative depending on who you are. So I almost put this as a neutral, but I am going to put this as a pro because I view it as a pro. But this is the first major change we've had to the meta in a long time. Now, Feudal Age is pretty much the same. Dark Age is pretty much the same. But if you've been playing this game for a while, for the past few seasons, yes, there were balance patches, but overall the game to me has felt the same. It was more boomy. It was, if you got the Castle Age, it became siege, keeps, walls. And again, I don't think keeps and walls are like going away. That's still going to be in the game, but it's just better. You can handle it better now. But there just weren't any major changes to me since like last year. I mean, even the expansion didn't change the meta at all. Really, the game's kind of felt the same for the past year or longer. I actually can't remember the last time I felt like a new season came out and I was like, and it was such big changes that the meta changed. Now, this mainly affects Castle Age and Imperial Age, as I said, and I'm going to go a little bit into those in a moment in the cons. In general, I think the Castle Age has just improved tremendously compared to what it was before. And now I do have a couple cons I'm going to talk about. The first one is now, while I personally think this did improve late game, it only did it by a little bit. Late game is still bad. While yes, there's no more siege warfare like before, which again for me is a big positive, overall late game is still in kind of the state where it just it can get to a point if it gets to the late game where it's not very fun. And in this patch, I've seen a lot of people complain about long games, but this isn't a new problem. We have had this problem for years. And you know, I'm not going to go into how to fix this because I can't give you that answer. I think it would take a lot of testing, and I hope the developers focus on the future. But in general, I believe this is due to infinite resources such as trade and passive gold. A lot of the times I've seen someone complain about a long game, it's been versus English. And English doesn't require trade because they just have all their farms that gather them a ton of gold. And that's what I've seen a lot of people, when I've seen anyone complain about late game, except for like a couple people, it's mostly been when they've played against English. And this makes me hope, but seeing that the developers were willing to change Siege, which has been a major talking point amongst the high level. Yes, there are some pro players who don't like it, but from most of the ones I've talked to, they have hated Siege forever. And I'm not talking about just Wham and Puppy either. I'm talking about other top players. So this isn't just to kind of put it out there. This wasn't just one or two people that wanted this change. This was like a major thing that a lot of high-level players wanted in this game. And honestly, you saw a lot of complaints about it on Reddit too. But the fact that the developers were willing to do something I didn't think they were willing to do, I am hoping that the developers will look into some late game solutions. Do I think they can ever make late game perfect where it's enjoyable 100% of the time? No. There's always going to be a part of this game that you're going to hate. It doesn't matter who you are. I don't care if Siege disappears or not or whatever. There's always going to be a point in the game that you're going to dislike, and for a lot of players, it's that late game. But I'm hopeful that for Season 10, which I think is when the next DLC is coming out, though I can't say that 100% because I'm not 100% sure. I'm hoping that they do try to make some changes to the late game. But again, there's been nothing confirmed or teased about this. But now that was a long rant on the first con. Let's go to the second con, the Springald. Now, while I'm okay with this, right now the Springald is just kind of a bad unit. It's supposed to be anti-melee, and it is cheap, so it's easy to mass them. But right now it just doesn't feel very worth making. And again, I'm okay with this. In my eyes, if Springalds were never seen again, I wouldn't care. It wouldn't affect me at all. But I am putting this as a negative because it is a unit in the game, and the unit is useless right now, really. I mean, it just doesn't really do its job very well. And while I do hope that when the developers buff this, I hope they don't overdo it, because I don't think it would take much to make this unit too strong. And I definitely hope we don't go that route where we go back into a Springald war, where even though it's not Springalds versus Siege, you know, if Springalds are too strong where they're dominating the battlefield, you know, it's no fun. So I imagine this unit's going to give a buff, and I hope the developers slightly buff and don't over buff it, because I think that could honestly ruin the game. And I'm just going to be honest, those are kind of the only two cons I could really list right now. I'm sure there's more that will come later the patch comes. One of the things is, and I knew this was going to happen, and everyone I talked to knew this was going to happen, is when you do big changes like this, imbalances are going to exist. Anyone who thought this patch was going to come out perfectly balanced or was, you know, perfectly ready to go was just fooling themselves. These changes will take time to balance out. For example, English, which while they were considered strong last patch, are now are probably overpowered in the late game, just because they have not only their passive gold, but they have the longbows and Windguard Rangers, which I believe outrange mangonels and Nestabes in the Imperial Age with the upgrades. And that is a problem, right? Because that's a very strong unit that Siege doesn't really help as much with. And that's just something that needs to be patched, you know. Either the range needs to be nerfed, or, you know, however they go about it. Passive gold needs to be nerfed, you know, however the developers had to go about it. But that's just an example. And I think we're going to see more imbalances as this patch evolves. I know in the PTR people were talking about elephants for Delhi being overpowered in the Imperial Age. I've also seen some people, I think like I don't like putting names, but I'm just gonna say I think Marine Lord has also stated that he thinks elephants are overpowered. But that's just again another thing that was found out with the patch, and that's why we're having further patches. Nothing's going to be balanced. It's not going to be perfectly balanced from the first go. There's going to be changes that are needed. For example, since the patch came out, we've already seen mangonels get buffed. Their range damage went from 8 to 10, and their ranged armor went from 80 to 85. And I'm sure there's going to be some further fine tuning that's going to be needed. Some civilizations are likely going to need to be nerfed, and some will need to be buffed. Again, that's just the way the game goes. The game has been pretty balanced, but there's always going to be some balance issues. As long as it's not stupidly imbalanced to a degree, I think we can all be happy with that. So far, I am personally very happy with what the developers are doing, and I am very happy that they are willing to put in the work to rebalance the game with changes like the Siege rework. I've said it earlier in this video, but I did not think that the developers were ever going to change Siege. I just assumed the game was going to kind of be how it is, especially because, the game's been out for 3 years. And so overall, I don't want to make this video too long, but it's already longer than I anticipated, but that's fine. Overall, I think this patch has been a major improvement for the game. I know I said this earlier, but I have talked to a lot of pros and I've watched a lot of streams, and most people seem to be enjoying this patch a lot. I've heard a lot of people talking about how Castle Age is a lot more fun to play, and even late game hasn't been as bad. Um, I've been having a blast watching people play, and even when it gets to the late game, when they hit that Imperial Age, I'm not tuning out as much as I used to. I'm personally having a blast playing the game, and I just it's been very refreshing in general. It's been refreshing to see trebuchets make a comeback. It's been refreshing to see a keep and not go whelp. I most likely have to get to Imperial Age to take out that keep because that's no longer the case. I know some people are not going to like this patch, and not everyone's going to be happy. It's just kind of how it is. And to kind of end this video out, if you like this patch, feel free to like this video. Give it a nice thumbs up. If you like me, give me a thumbs up. Or if you just feel like it, give me a thumbs up. But if you hate this patch, or you hate me, or you just feel like it, feel free to give me that thumbs down. Overall, though, I am going to be back to making more YouTube content, and I'm going to be playing a lot more Age of Empires 4. You can catch me on my stream at twitch.tv/blade55555. And that's all I have for you guys. Hope you guys enjoy the patch, the game, and have a great rest of your day. Peace.